Leveling and crowning your frets is a lot of work. Have you ever stopped and wondered, look, do I really have to do this? What if the answer was no? Hey folks, it's Glenn here in the Monster Guitars workshop. Maybe you should stop leveling your frets so much. I almost said stop leveling your frets, but that's bad advice. Sometimes you need to. But I'm going to suggest to you that very often people who build guitars level the frets because they think it's part of the process that is really required. They get their leveling beam out and they sand the peaks off their frets because it's part of the process. I'm going to say, let's think a little bit more critically about that process and whether or not this is something you actually need to be doing every time. I'll show you what I mean. So, I'm not looking at that neck, I'm looking at this neck here, which is a very Strat style guitar neck. And I've got the frets in and I've roughly dressed the ends of them. I'm going to be doing everything more precisely and nicely shortly. I've got a piece of hard candy in my mouth. Hopefully I'm still speaking clearly enough. So, I want to illustrate the way that the fret leveling process works. When you're leveling the frets, the end goal is to have all your frets the same height so that you don't get buzz when you're playing the guitar. And this is what you're trying to eliminate. So, oh, that's not a good example because there's actually no there's no rocking there. That's quite level. You're using a tool called a fret rocker, which has 4 different length straight edges, and you're putting the rocker across 3 frets, and if the middle one is high, then it will rock to the left and right and bang on the other 2 frets, and it'll be a dead giveaway that some fret work needs to be done there. All I've done so far is pressed these frets in with a fret press. Now I'm looking for high spots. I hope I haven't done it too well so that there's nothing to show you because there are no high spots. I'm sure there will be. Because if there were no high spots at all and all your frets were immediately the same height, then you wouldn't need to do any leveling, would you? I'm getting too good at this. That's not good. I'm just searching for a spot where there's a bit of movement. Is that it? No, I lifted it up slightly. And there is none. All I need is one really to make the point, so I'll keep searching. Oops. And the reason there are different lengths on this is because as you go higher up the fretboard, you need a shorter fret rocker. Okay, that's a good illustration. Can you hear that? So what that means is that there is at least one spot. In fact, it's the case all the way across that middle fret there. That fret is very slightly higher than that one and that one. And what the leveling process does is you wouldn't normally use a file, or I don't use a file these days, but you could use a file, or you could use a fret leveling beam with sandpaper, and you go over the top of the fret, and you'd be filing or sanding that one down to make it level with the others. What you'd be doing, of course, is filing all the frets to make sure they're all level. Now, where was that fret? That's it there, I think. Oh no, that's it. That's it. But you possibly don't need to do that, because the fret wire, every piece of fret wire is the same height, or undetectably different from another part of the same wire. So you have to think, why is that one sitting higher than the others. It's not going to be because of a difference in size of the wire. It's going to be because of insertion. Like one has been inserted into the fretboard at a very slightly different height, which got me thinking, well, why can't you just hammer that one down so that it's at the same height as the others and there's no longer any rocking? Would that work? Well, it turns out it does. So I'm doing this one-handed. I wasn't even hitting that very hard because it doesn't need to go in much further. And now, look, there is no rocking there now. Most of, if not all, of the rocking can be eliminated just by properly hammering in your fret. For some people, they wouldn't even do that rehammering. All they would do is they would observe that there is a rock going on there. So they would put a mark on top of that fret and then proceed, and then they would do a fret leveling. They would sand those marked frets down. Well, don't remove metal from your frets unless it's absolutely necessary. And in this case, it's just not necessary. Very slight rock at one end, but oh no, it's all the way across. No rock. Is there a rock there now? Barely perceptible rock there now. So it would be boring to take you through every single fret and do this. Being fairly gentle there. So I won't go through all the frets with you watching because that would be dull. But I'm going to go to the very top of the fretboard and see if I can get all of the frets level just by doing a gentle tap in if necessary. So I repeated the process that I showed you, going all the way up to the top of the fretboard 3 times, because when you adjust the height of a fret by tapping it, you're potentially, ruining the level that you had with the surrounding frets. So I think I've got it now to a point where there are no high frets, nothing rocks. I've checked it several times, trust me. Nothing rocks all the way up the fretboard. And I have not filed or sanded anything. Now, I'm not saying you should never level the frets in that way with a file or sanding. It may be, especially with stainless steel frets, which are really quite rigid and there's not much give in them. Although I am using stainless steel frets, it may be that there is a particular fret or two that even when you've tapped it is just going to be a little bit high and there's no other way. In that situation, then sure, do some filing or sanding as required. But look, basically, you don't want to remove metal from frets unless you have to. One good reason you don't want to is that when you buy fret wire or pre-cut frets, they've got a beautiful round crown on the top of them. And once you've leveled a fret, it's now got a flat top and you have to restore the crown onto that via the crowning process, which number one is time consuming, but number two, even if you're very good at it, it's probably not going to be the perfect round crown that your fret wire started with. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it because you'll just screw it up and make it worse. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for now. Don't level your frets unless you really need to.